Welcome to the Scientist with Heart Podcast, my open diary of academic life. This is a space where I share my personal thoughts and reflections on research, teaching, and university life. These are my own opinions, and the aim is to spark discussion, exchange perspectives, and gather insights from others navigating the academic roller coaster at the bench and in the lecture hall. A while ago, I joined a career development workshop. The idea was to bring together researchers at different stages. Some more junior, some more senior, but all of us somewhere in the middle of the academic path. We weren't beginners anymore, but we also weren't professors with permanent jobs. At first, the workshop was about sharing experiences and learning from each other. But sooner or later, as it happens quite often, the discussion turned towards the atmosphere in academia, and eventually the topic of toxicity came up. One younger PhD student began speaking, and I could hear her frustration in the voice. She said, "The job feels toxic, it's confusing, it's isolating. Sometimes it feels so lonely that I don't know if I can stand it and if I really want this for my life." Her words really stayed with me because, yes, academia can feel toxic. I don't disagree. I have experienced that myself, but at the same time, I wanted to offer something that went beyond agreeing, beyond just nodding. So I shared a perspective that I have been practicing for myself to survive, basically. I asked her, when was the last time you turned to a colleague and instead of talking about work, you asked about the weekend, latest holiday, whether they are happy with their project? When was the last time you looked at someone who seemed down or angry and tried in a small way to brighten their day? Without any benefit to yourself, simply to contribute just a little to the mood of your microenvironment. Academia is a roller coaster of emotions. One day you're frustrated because your experiment failed for the third time in a row. The next you're walking on air because your paper just got accepted. Some days you're full of positive energy to share. Other days you feel completely drained, like you can barely face your desk. And now picture 10 or 15 people working together in a lab, each of them riding their own roller coaster at the same time, but not in sync. It's no surprise that emotions clash constantly, misunderstandings happen, and what feels like toxicity starts to spread in the group. And I did not even mention the language and communication barriers that are often very much contributing to misunderstandings and the mood in an international lab environment. There is also something almost automatic that happens when you join a new lab or academic team. At the beginning, you bring your own personality, your own optimism, your fresh start, but within just a few weeks, you've absorbed the atmosphere around you. This happens automatically. It is cultural assimilation, but much faster. If the group is supportive and healthy, you get pulled up into that energy. If the group is negative and bitter, you get dragged down. I have seen this happen again and again across labs, institutions, and countries. It's almost inevitable, and I guess it's an inherent feature of people working in communities. Which is why it's so important to ask ourselves, if the collective mood is so contagious, what role am I playing in shaping it? For myself, I learned that I can never be the perfect colleague. Far from it, but also nobody can. Academia is too demanding, too unpredictable. We're all at different stages with different pressures. PhDs worried about finishing on time, postdocs stressed about the next job, technicians and postdocs balancing family and lab life, and so on. So instead of aiming for perfection, I asked the simpler question: what portion of my energy do I want to contribute to improving my immediate environment? On days where I have very little energy, I don't force it. I take space for myself. But on days when I have more energy, I practice actively what I call microactivism. That might be something tiny, asking, for example, a younger colleague how they are, listening to their answer, really listening to their answer, asking a colleague if their sick child is feeling better, noticing some stress in a person and ask, like, can I help you with something? Is everything okay? These are not big heroic acts, and it might sound silly at this point, but if you actively start doing it, they cost very little, but they shift the atmosphere in small, important ways. And don't get the wrong impression. Often I have no energy left to do it. Zero energy. But occasionally, once a week or so, I put myself up for it. Another thing that I want to share connected to this topic is I am not a very social colleague in many typical ways. For example, I usually don't join group lunches. And that is not because I dislike my colleagues per se, but because for me, a lunch break is about recharging. Eating together, chatting about weekend plans or whatever actually drains me instead of restoring me. I need quiet to recover energy. I need to let my own thoughts flow. So in that sense, I skip those social rituals, and that's because I know my limits. I try to make up for it in other ways. When I am in the lab, I ask people about their projects actively. I keep myself updated, not only on the science, but also on some aspects of the human side. And knowing how someone is doing, what they might be worried about, and how the group dynamic is affecting them, that's really powerful. And it's really not about faking interest. It's about recognizing that emotions matter and atmosphere matters, and that each of us contributes to it. So that's the essence of microactivism for me. It's not about being an extrovert or forcing yourself into activities you hate. It's about finding your way of showing care consistently and authentically. When people talk about toxicity in academia, often the advice is, if you don't like it, just leave. And yes, sometimes leaving is the right choice. Sometimes the environment really is unbearable. But often we don't have that luxury. The next position is far away, contracts are short, and opportunities are limited. In those cases, it's not enough to just endure, because it's not getting better. The atmosphere becomes critical to your survival, and that's where microactivism makes a huge difference. Even small acts accumulate. Imagine if every person in a lab did one small act of kindness per week, just because it rubs off, it's getting copied. The ripple effect would be enormous. My invitation is this. The next time you feel the weight of toxicity in academia, ask yourself 2 questions. Am I absorbing the negativity without realizing it? So where on the scale of energy am I? And the second question, do I have even a little energy today to shift the atmosphere towards something more positive? If the answer to the second question is yes, then practice a small act of microactivism. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be every day. But those small acts are what carve out a livable space even in a system that can feel hostile. While we cannot fix academia overnight with the issues and problems that were discussed widely online, we can improve our corner of it. And if enough of us contribute in small ways, those corners start to add up. That's what I believe. That's what I practiced the last 10 years, and I still did not lose hope. Microactivism is in the end about responsibility, not for the whole system, that's too big, not for changing institutions, but it is responsibility for one's own immediate surrounding and for my immediate colleagues also. So if each of us carried that responsibility just a little, again, imagine how much lighter, kinder, and more humane academic life could feel. Please let me know what you think about this approach, and I'm really open to any input and any response